Plaiting is a knitting technique where two different yarns are fed into the same hook, usually from two different yarn guides, and knit together. One yarn will appear on the front of the fabric and the other on the back. I wanted to make this pattern on my circular sock machine, but I was struggling with the tiny black stitches. They were really loose and did not look good. After a little bit of trial and error, I finally decided to try making the pattern using a plaiting technique. I was really pleased with the results. After making the cuff of the sock, I reduced the stitch length slightly. I wanted to make sure that the pattern section would not be too tight. You may not have to do that on your machine. You'll just have to experiment and see if it makes a difference for you. So this is how I will actually get a tail of yarn started. I want to have 3 colors going at the same time with this particular pattern. So I need to weave in this end. What I do is I release the yarn from my yarn carrier and I just cross the black in between any 2 needles. It doesn't really matter. Then I will put the white yarn back in so that now you can see the yarn is crossed. You can see that the black yarn is threaded below. This will keep the yarn in place until I get going with the stitches. I'm just going to manually pull the tension out of all the yarns and slowly knit forward. I do not need the black yarn in the yarn guide. I'm just trying to anchor it in place. The green is the start of my row. So now you can see that the black yarn is anchored in place. It's going to sort of stay over there, tucked out of the way. I'm not going to pull it too much because it can come out. If you want, you could always put a little clip or something just to keep that tail in place. I have these little bulldog clips. I really enjoy using them. Just enough weight to keep it in place without putting too much tension on it. I do want my yarn to stay snug when I'm cranking, so I'm going to engage my heel spring, but I'm going to have the absolute least amount of tension on it. So now you can see that it's not tight, it's just out of the way. What's helpful is that you could use stitch markers to mark where you're going. So that way you know where you can make the changes until you can see a pattern. Right now I have no reference. I will knit over to this stitch. This is where all the action happens. I am slowly going to crank so that the needle beside it, the latch will be closed. And I can see here that the latch just closed. That way I know that needle is out of the way. This yarn shouldn't accidentally pop out of it. I'm going to remove my marker. I'm just going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this stitch needs to be black. In order to get it to knit black, it needs to go on the very top. I leave the white in my yarn guide because that's my main color. It's always going to be in the background of the design. By putting the black yarn on the very top of the needle, it is going to plait it. So the white and the black are going to be knit together. I'm going to advance forward slowly, and with my pattern I'm going to skip one, and then I need the second one also black. I find it's easier to work with a hook on the end of my tool. So now I make sure that the second one is also under the hook. The tricky part is to make sure that the yarn stays behind the needle you aren't using. I'm going to go forward slowly. You can see how this needle, it will have two yarns, the white and then the black is on the top. That latch has closed, so now I'm going to count around for my next set of needles that will be white. My next color in black isn't going to be for a few stitches. I'm going to do 9 stitches in white. Not counting the one that is plaited, I'm going to count 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 white, and then I'm going to plait a black. So now I'm going to crank over to this needle and ensure that the one directly in front of it, the hook will be closed. I want this latch to be closed. It's closed. I will take off my marker, and now I need this needle to have a black on it. I'm going to crank until that latch closes to keep it in place. You can see that I have the yarn. It's going to knit both of them at the same time on that one needle. The black is at the top and the white is at the bottom. I'm going to skip a needle and then I want another black one, so I will just put it into place now. You will notice that over here I have a pretty long float. You can see how it's come away from the edge of the machine. What I do now is I just grab it with a hook and I just hang it over a needle. Any needle at all, it doesn't matter. We just want to get a little more length in that yarn so that it won't be too tight. I'm coming back over here. I'm going to focus on these needles and I want to make sure that this one knits and not the one beside it. I'm skipping that one. Once this yarn is done, I have the slack in it. I find it's easier to do it right away, is to unhook it. So now, there's plenty of slack in that yarn. It's not tight. So this way my sock will have the stretch that I need. I usually do it anywhere from 5 or more stitches. That is where you have a long float. What I do with all these floats to deal with them is I do a ladderback jacquard, and I will show how to do that later. So for now, I am back over here focusing on the plaiting. There's my marker, so I'm going to come up to it. The stitch before it, I want that latch closed. It's closed now. I can take the marker off. Grab my black yarn and I'm just going to hook it over that needle. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I want to watch for it to knit, or at least to have the latch closed, and then I'm just going to hook the yarn over the next needle that I need to be black. And you can see how I'm starting to get a bar here. I want this needle to go down before I do anything with this float. Once that needle is down, it has a little bit of tension on it, but not so much that I can't grab this bar and pull it over. It will still stretch the yarn and give it a little slack. Once this needle's down, I'm ready to count off my next sequence. I'll just speed through the next little bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing without all these words. So now I'm coming up to my second row. I didn't bother lifting off these floats before, but I'm going to do them now. You don't want to forget to have them lifted off. Otherwise, you're going to end up wrapping the yarn, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Sometimes when you wrap a color, it will show through. Leaving the bar of yarn over the needles is the same as catching floats in stranded knitting. Sometimes that bar can be seen on the right side of the work. Here's how it will look when that happens. So I've unhooked all my floats, and as you can see, they're nice and loose, so there's a lot of slack, which is fantastic. Now I'm going to continue on with the next row, and it's exactly the same technique. This one does not have long floats. This one I have at the most 5 stitches, so I will not be hanging the yarn to make it looser. I find with this the 5 stitches will be plenty. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. I'm coming up to the start of my row. I framed my target needle. This is the start of my row. I made sure that this needle is closed so I don't have to deal with it. Luckily, my very next stitch is black, and that's what I will do, is I'm just going to hook the yarn over that stitch and then crank forward. This row is going to be much easier. You can see here where I've done a black, I've missed one, I've done a black, and I know that there's going to be a black right in the center. You can go ahead and you could hang that yarn now, or you could wait until you get to it later. Whatever technique you want to use is absolutely fine. But when you're doing it, you want to make sure that the yarn is behind all the other needles. So let's go ahead and crank towards that one. You can see how the black yarn is on top. It has to be on the top of the hook for the Jacquard to work. And you will also notice over here that the floats are not out. Remember, I showed you when it was taut that this one was out from the fabric. So these ones are in closer to the cylinder, so I don't need to hang them to stretch them. There's going to be enough yarn there, so it's going to be stretchy enough. So now I'm getting ready to add my third color. I'm going to put a little clip on it just to give the tail a bit of weight. I'm going to do what I did before. I'm just going to pass it in between 2 needles just so that I can sort of lock it into place. I get my main yarn, I make sure that I've caught all of my needles and that it's in place, and I'm going to crank forward. I actually want the red yarn to be inside the cylinder, and as you can see, it's kind of twisted up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it in this needle over here. Let's come in close. So you can see this bar is holding the red in place, but now I want to move it over in this direction. So I'm just going to twist the yarns and move the red to the inside, and the red, I'm going to move the red to the inside of the cylinder and the white back into the working position. The red is behind that stitch and it is not knit. It's not going to show. So I'm all set up to be working with 3 colors now. On this row, I am using all of the 3 colors. So I'm going to knit 3 white and then I'm going to go to a black. 1, 2, 3 white, and then I'm knitting with a black. So you're wondering, should I grab the back from behind or should I grab the black from in front? I don't want to twist these 2 colors, so you just want to make sure that they don't get twisted. It doesn't matter which one is in front of the other. When you're feeding the yarn this way, it's just easy to keep them from not twisting. So right here is where I want the black yarn. So I'm going to put it underneath the hook. And then, as before, I'm going to crank so this needle is down and out of the way so I don't have to worry about it. Once the needle is down, I can see that I have a little bit too much tension on this yarn. I'll move the red out of the way and you can see how there's space between that yarn and the cylinder. So I'm going to hook it over a needle that's already been knit just to give it some additional slack. Back over here to where I'm focusing, and I'm getting ready to use the red. I want 3 red in a row so I can go ahead and load those needles. Grab my red and make sure they're under those 3 needles with the hook. I want to knit a white and now I want a black. So I'll zoom out. I'm going to grab the black yarn so it's not twisted and just hook it over the needle I want. Once you've passed one of these yarns that you've parked out of the way, just grab it and release it. So it may seem a little slow at first, but honestly, it's faster than knitting by hand. Once you get into a rhythm, it's all going to make sense. So I'm going to stop talking now and I'm just going to go ahead and knit. You can watch the video in slow speed if you like, or you could speed it up. So I've just noticed I made a huge mistake over here. I have my entire pattern offset by 1 stitch, so I need to bring everything over. I'm just going to on-knit these stitches. And I need this one to be knit. This is a little tricky because the stitch that was knit was already a jacquard, and if you look carefully at the stitch you can see that it has a white and a red underneath. You can see it there. So that's correct. This stitch does have 2 yarns on it because it is a jacquard. This one, I need to on-knit it, and this one needs to be jacquard with a red in front. So I'm going to on-knit it. It's pretty tricky to grab. I find it's easier if I pull the stitch forward and then grab whatever bars are there and pull them over. and move the knit yarn to behind. And again, this stitch is also a jacquard. You can see the red underneath. It doesn't matter because I'm going to knit it again, and it also needs to be jacquard again. So this is where it's easier to do it with a separate latch. I'm going to take that stitch off of the needle and insert my latch tool. You can really see the two different colors there. Don't move them, don't change them, just let them sit as they are. So they go underneath the latch. Then you have your main color, which goes first, and then the next color, which is the jacquard stitch. It's interesting to see how this works, because there it is under the hook, and that is the one which will show in front. So if I slowly knit this stitch, I'm correcting it. See how it's magic, and now that red stitch is on the bottom, and that's what's going to show on the outside. So now I'm going to grab this stitch and put it over my needle. So again, you only see the white because that goes on the inside. The stitch next to it needs to be black, but I've knit it over here, so I have to come over here and undo this one so I can grab that black yarn. So this stitch needs to be knit. I'm going to pick it up with my latch, take it off the needle. Again, you can see there's two yarns on that needle. This is a jacquard stitch. That red is on the outside. So I'm going to first load the needle with the white, and now black, because I want that to show on the outside. So the black goes under the hook. Slowly knit that stitch, and there's the magic. So the black stitch is now on the outside, and that's what will show. I've got to do a couple more, and you'll be able to see how all of that happens. I have to undo the one next to it. This needs to be red, so I need to find a red bar. There's nothing here, so I need to pick it up from the stitch over here. There's the red bar, and that's what I need to knit over here. So let's go ahead and do that. I put my hook underneath, I grab the stitch off, it's a jacquard stitch. I need to do the white first on top of the latch. And then the red under the hook. Now I can knit those stitches. You can see it didn't work out. The red is on the top. That means it's going to show on the inside. I need it to show on the outside. So I'm going to hook those stitches together, take my latch out, grab those two yarns, and I'm going to do it again. The red yarn needs to stay under the hook, so I'm going to use my tool to keep that red yarn in place until it's knit. There we are. Now it's correct. The red is on the bottom, and it's going to show on the outside of the cylinder. I'm happy with that one, so I can go ahead and hang it. The stitch needs to be black. There's a small black bar here. I could probably grab it, but I need to undo this one anyway because this one needs to be red. That one was red, so I could go ahead and unhook that. You don't want to unhook too many at a time because you can end up with all kinds of bars, and it's very easy to get lost on where you are. This stitch is actually going to remain white, so I'm just going to go ahead and knit it. It's done, it's out of the way. So I've lost track of where I am. Red, black. So this one needs to be black. Oh, I need to undo the one beside it. There we are. There's my black bar. So I'm going to load my hook, pull it off of the needle. This is tricky because the needles are sharp and they tend to grab the yarn where they shouldn't. There we are. I need to take my white, which is my base color, make sure it's above the latch. I'm going to grab my black and I'm going to pull it from behind because I need to keep tension on that so it'll stay at the top. Not much, just enough to keep it there. Oops. And I lost my stitch. No, there it is. The white and the black are both on this side of the latch. Knit the stitch, and again it's wrong. The black needs to be on the outside, so I'm going to redo it again. It might take a couple of tries to do it, but it's certainly better than ripping out all this color work and starting again because you made a mistake. So little tension on the black. And I missed it again. What we can do is we could try to lift the white over the black. Pull the black and force it to the outside. There we are. By separating them this way, we can ensure that the black will stay on the outside. Load it onto my needle. And that worked out good. So there's the white. And this needs to be a red jacquard. I can see my white bar, so I know that this is the base stitch. It needs to be knit. So let's pick up this stitch. Let's pick up the stitch and load it onto my latch hook tool. Oh, I have the yarn split. That's the problem. You can always just grab this needle and pull it out of the way, as long as you're confident that you have the stitch onto your needle. I'm going to put this needle back in place. Sometimes it takes a little bit of effort to fix these things. So here's my working white. Grab the bar. It needs to go over the latch. There it is. The white is over the latch. The colors are below the latch. Here is my red. It needs to go into the hook. A little bit of pressure to keep it there. And again, I've misstitched it, so I'm going to grab that white and just pick it and lift it over the red. Easier said than done. There we are. So now I force the red to be on the outside, and that's exactly where we need it. So I've managed to fix those stitches. So now I can continue on with my pattern. It is tricky, but if you take your time and you're patient, you can fix these mistakes. It's much easier to go a little slower and make sure that you do count right. Some people put little bits of paint on the needles so that they can keep track. This is how the floats will look when you're finished. You may have some shorter sections and you may have some longer ones. The shorter sections are fine, you don't need to do anything with them, but the longer sections, if it's easy to catch a toe in it, you may want to do something with it. One method is to grab a latch hook or a crochet hook and just chain them up. It's the same as latching up a stitch. You don't need to anchor the bottom. Grab a bar and then just start latching, the same as you would if you had a drop stitch. When you get to the end of a section where there's no long floats, you can just put in a stitch marker like I've done here. Then you grab a tapestry needle or a darning needle with your background color and then just stitch in that last stitch. It's still very stretchy, but this way your floats will not catch. Another method is to take a tapestry needle or a darning needle and thread it with your background color. Anchor the tail by weaving in. I like to weave in at an angle. You don't need very many stitches. This is not going to show on the front, but even if it did, you're using the background color, so nobody will see it. Then you simply weave in and out each of the stitches. You work your way to the top, anchor the needle around a stitch, and then you need to come back the other way, going the opposite of each stitch. So over, under, over, under, over, under. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just need to catch all of those long floats. Keep it loose, and as you can see, it's nice and stretchy and your toes are not going to catch. Run your thread, the tail, along the other direction, and that's it. Very, very simple. Two different methods of anchoring your floats. This is how it looks on the outside. I've anchored in the floats. You can see one of them is latched, the other is stitched in. When you turn it around, they're both pretty much invisible. And that's how I do jacquard knitting for these small little patterns where you don't have a lot of stitches in a row, especially where you have one or two stitches and then a lot of space. I did not need to do the jacquard technique for the red, but I thought I would just go ahead and do it. I was already in the groove, so I completed it that way. As you can see, there's no white showing through, yet it is double fabric. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that you found this helpful.